Okay. Let's see if people come on. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على إمام الأنبياء المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض أن تحبط أعمالكم أنتم لا تعلمون إن الذين يغضون أصواتهم عند رسول الله أولئك الذين امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى لهم مغفرة وأجر عظيم إن الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات أكثرهم لا يعقلون ولو أنهم صبروا حتى تخرج إليهم لكان خير لهم غفور رحيم صدق الله العظيم. Sorry, my desk is unstable, so it might be coming up and down. There, I stuck something under the leg back there. Are you able to hear me okay? Someone from the community, may Allah reward them, I don't know who it is, anonymously sent me a microphone. And so I'm utilizing that microphone. May Allah Ta'ala grant him or her or the family, whoever it was, an abundant amount of reward in this world and the hereafter. And whatever good comes from this microphone, may Allah Ta'ala grant them the reward of it and acceptance for it, whatever classes are taught, whatever programs are held, etc. Last week we were able to go to the first two verses of Surah Al-Hujurat. The week before, we were introduction about this idea of the rights of human beings upon one another, or the rights of creation. And last week we went into a bit of detail in the first verse where we spoke about not preceding Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to raise our voice above the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the result of doing so would be potentially that all of the deeds that we have gathered can be completely lost forever. And this week, one of the things I wanted to get into was this idea. And last week we spoke about how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum responded to this verse. And this week what I thought would be worthwhile is if we get into why this was established and who these individuals were, and so the situation which the Prophet ﷺ had lived, like the conditions of the Prophet's life. I can't show you right now because I think we can't share on YouTube Live. But if you ever go into, if you go on YouTube, if you go online, there are depictions of how the home of the Prophet ﷺ was. It's categorized. It was reconstructed for a display in Riyadh, I believe, or in Jeddah, and also was then built into a small model within Saudi as well. And when you see it, one of the things that stands out is that it doesn't completely fit the picture I always had in mind. I always thought it to be a plain and empty bedroom. But at the same time, there's a level of simplicity there, a level of taking care of what a person needs. Now, in these verses in particular, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing, in the Surah Al-Hujurat, the places of dwelling of the lives of the Prophet ﷺ. And the places where the wives of the Prophet ﷺ used to live, they were, so you have to imagine the masjid for a moment. So pretend this is the masjid. This is the Now the masjid is not enclosed, it's actually open. If you pretend sort of like this is the masjid, and this is where the imam will be facing, then off to this side here, the imam's facing here, and this is the left of the imam, would be a row of small homes. Pretty much one bedroom structures. That's pretty much all it was. And the restrooms are not inside here. The restrooms you have to go to the outskirts. There's no real kitchen system here. There might be a bit of a courtyard, but they're attached to the masjid such that there's a door from the external part. So again, now we face the front. This is the masjid. Outside here, there's going to be homes. There'll be a door from the external, from the outside, from the street inside. And from inside here, there's sort of windows into the masjid as well. And when people used to come to see the Prophet ﷺ, what some of them used to do is they would raise their voice and they would call out to the Prophet ﷺ. And some would call out to the Prophet ﷺ by using loud voices. And others would even say, "Oh Muhammad." And namely, a delegation from Banu Tamim did this. They would call each out to the Prophet ﷺ in that way. Now, what were these homes? You had the length was about 10.5 feet. The width was about 15 feet. The height was less than 7 feet tall. These are small rooms. Maybe where I'm sitting right now in this library over here, maybe the length of this library. I mean, maybe the size of this library. I think the ceiling's higher than 7.5 feet over here, but everything else is sort of the same. That's the entire home. And now it's attached to the masjid, and the Prophet would be inside these homes with Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, and people would come and say, "Oh Muhammad," and they would sort of raise their voices for him to come out. And so when they did this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He did not like this. And so the next two verses are devoted to these types of ideas. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, "La tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabi," don't raise your voice in front of the voice of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When this command was given, the Sahaba lowered their voices immediately. Those near the Prophet ﷺ began to rethink, should we even be in his company? Some began to not speak until they were called upon. Some began to speak in a whisper. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loved this reaction. And He said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَغُضُّونَ أَصْوَاتُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, those who lower their voices in the presence of the Messenger of Allah. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُمْ لِلتَّقْوَى, we have tested their hearts for taqwa. And the taqwa became clear. That in this particular test, rather than making excuses and say our voices are loud naturally, or we're very comfortable with the Prophet ﷺ, or how do you expect us to interact with him, or provide other excuses, what do? They immediately assumed that they have to fix themselves and change their way. So, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَغُضُّونَ أَصْوَاتَهُمْ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, they were the ones, امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى, Allah tested their hearts, and their hearts shone through to be amongst those who had taqwa within them. Secondly, there were those around the Prophet that did not even raise their voices naturally. They would normally just keep their voices low out of respect and deference for the Prophet. Many would sit in his company in absolute silence and not raise their voice in front of the Prophet. But these individuals, from the very get-go, out of respect and honor for the Prophet, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَغُضُّونَ أَصْوَاتَهُمْ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُمْ لِلتَّقْوَى. Now, there was another group of individuals who did raise their voice around the Prophet ﷺ, but did not do so out of any ill intent. These were the A'rab. These were the Bedouins that sometimes would come in the company of the Prophet ﷺ, and because of their rough nature, constantly traveling outside in the elements of the desert region of Arabia, they were sort of rough. And those individuals would call the Prophet ﷺ, "Ya Muhammad," and they would raise their voice. Those individuals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overlooked how they would behave, because this was sort of the way they naturally interact with everyone, and that was their frame of reference. But the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, though they saw these individuals do this, and sometimes they liked that they did this because it brought a sense of informality to the gathering, they themselves never carried this, took this mantle and placed it upon themselves. Why am I mentioning this? Well, there's a lesson to be learned over here. The lesson is that sometimes with people of scholarship or people who are elders or people who have position, etc., there may be a group that can interact with them in a different way. But if we are not from that group, we cannot all of a sudden adopt that. Even the Prophet ﷺ would differentiate in the way he acted around different people. In the famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was, who was the Sahabi? Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, radiallahu anhu, I believe it was him, who wanted to spend the day with the Prophet ﷺ, but saw the Prophet ﷺ sitting in a type of, well, this is a different hadith. The Prophet ﷺ was sitting, and when he was sitting, part of his flank, part of his leg was exposed. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu came and sat with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not change anything, and Abu Bakr sat in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they sat together. Umar radiallahu anhu then came. When he came, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not change anything, and he remained seated in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet did not change anything about himself either. Uthman radiallahu anhu came. He was granted permission to come, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam readjusted his garments such that everything was covered completely. Now, this seemed a little foreign and strange, but the Prophet's explanation of this is: should I not have modesty in front of the one whom even the angels have modesty? Over here, we see that behavior is sometimes dictated by the personality of the person and the one with whom she interacts. And so here, the Prophet ﷺ kept a love of informality with two of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and even with Uthman radiallahu anhu, he had a love of informality as well, but it was different than the other two. The angels observed a type of modesty around Uthman radiallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ also did the same. It did not lower the rank of the other two Sahaba radiallahu anhum at all. Rather, what it showed to us is that when you interact with people, sometimes you would change the way of interaction with those people based upon their mizaj, their type of their natural disposition. So the Arab, when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes they would raise their voice, but the Sahaba, they would speak to him by his first name. But the Prophet ﷺ did not rebuke them for this, nor did the other Sahaba try to copy this and bring it upon themselves. So we should also recognize that sometimes when you see people like this, like we might see, a very extreme example would be sometimes we see people interacting with our parents. They may call our parents by their first name, our parents' first name. We don't just go call our parents by their first name. That'd be very strange. Rather, what we do is we recognize that this is our parents or our parents, and we have respect for them and deference for them, regardless of how others may interact with them, even child to child. There's a certain informality I have with my older son that I don't have with my second son. A certain informality I have with my second son that I don't have with my older son. It's just the way it is. With one, I will joke one way. With one, I'll joke another way. One is a little more serious-minded, so I behave that way around him. One is a little more fun-loving in his demeanor. I behave that way. That's the nature of the way that we interact with people. It's very important for us to recognize that. Now, continuing, for these people are forgiveness and a great reward. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَكَ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. But those people who come without excuse, and they just come from behind the chair and they begin to call out, most of these people, they have no sense. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ. If only these individuals had remained patient until you, O Messenger of Allah, came out to them, لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. It would have been better for them. وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah is the most merciful, most forgiving. Now, when individuals would come in front of the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and they would begin to raise their voices in this way, the Prophet ﷺ, being very modest, he would not say anything. But this was not befitting of the Prophet ﷺ. So Allah Ta'ala mentions about these individuals who do this, and again in this Sabab Nuzul, we speak about Banu Tamim, or a group from Banu Tamim who did this, that Allah Ta'ala mentions أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Most of them, they don't have proper understanding, proper fahm. And we don't want, anytime these types of terms are used, أكثرهم لا يعقلون, أكثرهم لا يعرف, أفلا تعقلون, not that one, أكثرهم لا يعقلون. We don't want to be like those people. In fact, Umar radiallahu anhu used to have this dua, Allahumma ja'alni min al-aqal. Oh Allah, make me from the people who are few. So someone asked, what does that mean? To which he clarified, so many times in Quran we see qalilum this, qalilum that, or aktharuhum la. It would often point to the few individuals having sense, having understanding, having proper application, and the majority of the world not having the same. Now, this is an important point as well, because sometimes we think everyone's doing it, everyone's doing it. Just because everyone's doing it does not make it right. In fact, we know that Bada al-Islamu gharib. Islam began as something that was strange. Bada al-Islamu, Islam began gharib. As what? Something that's strange. وَسَيَعُودُ غَرِيبًا كَمَا بَدَأَ. And it will return back to being strange as that began. فَتُوبَى إِلَى الْغُرَبَاء. Glad tidings to those who are strange. And this is belief and action application. So if people are doing things in the modern sense, it doesn't change us in any way. We still have a reality that we have to embody. And the example of Umar radiallahu anhu comes to mind, that when he came to Masjid al-Aqsa, there were some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum who changed their appearance for that great day. And not like just the way they dressed. So Umar radiallahu anhu actually walked by them without even saying salam. And then they thought, well, he didn't even say salam to us. They went, what did we do wrong? Then they went, they changed back to their garments, they came back. Umar radiallahu anhu greeted them as if he hadn't even seen them the first way. So many times we see, for example, Hudayfa bin Yaman radiallahu anhu was sitting and some food fell from his plate and he was with, I forget which leader, if it was from the Romans or from the Persians, I believe it's the Romans. And he went down to pick it up, because the sunnah is if you drop food, you pick it up, you dust off the dirt and you eat it. And then he saw everyone would look at his advisor told him, don't do this. This is not the way of the people. So he said, أَأَتْرَكُ سُنَّةَ حَبِيبِي لِهَؤُلَاءِ حَمْقَى. Do I leave the sunnah of my beloved ﷺ for these foolish individuals? I'm not saying eating on a table or eating with utensils, etc., is being a sellout. What I am saying is that we have practices that, by the very nature of our Islam, are celebrated practices. And we shouldn't give them up. What is that? Simplicity, we shouldn't give it up. Asceticism, we shouldn't give it up. Gratitude, we shouldn't give it up. Just because the modern world likes to be ungrateful doesn't mean that we like to be ungrateful. The celebration of the self, that's not something we should take upon ourselves. Everyone does it now. Everyone has all this, social media, etc. And they try to push themselves, elevate themselves. And not everyone, many people, not everyone. Sorry. There are people who use it for good. But at the same time, we shouldn't just say, well, everyone else is doing, I'm going to do the same thing. Since when did everyone else doing something have to become the standard? In fact, if we fall in the category of what everyone's doing, sometimes that's not always a good sign for us. So rather, what we should do is we should recognize that this is not good for me. I should be amongst those who are doing what the Prophet directed me to do. And so Allah Ta'ala mentions, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. If they were just patient until you came out, that'd be better for them. وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. But Allah is most forgiving, most merciful. He'll still forgive and overlook this. But what is this? Because if the Prophet ﷺ was busy, and this is a lesson for all of us, if we're being impatient and impetuous, and we're saying, we're calling a person over and over and over, and they finally pick up and like, okay, I got them on the phone. Well, they might not be in the state of mind or in the situation in which they can speak. At that moment, we would have lost out. I remember I had to get a fatwa on something recently. So I was contacting a mufti who's not in this country, elsewhere, and I had contacted him. I'd actually asked him, can I reach out to you? He's like, yeah, go ahead, give me a call. So I called him, and so he just answered very, very briefly, and then he said, you know what, I just haven't been feeling good the past few days, so I just won't be able to respond to you properly. So I said, that's fine, no problem. And then I reached out to him recently, just seeing how he's doing. Then he said, and I said, I'll reach out to him after Ramadan for this fatwa. But the thing is, if I pushed and said, look, I need it now, he wasn't in the position to give it. And as a result, it would have only harmed me. So one of the things that we learned from here, sometimes you have to give people their time. I notice that sometimes with students, they sort of hover around the teacher and they begin to sort of push her until the person's like, okay, fine, what do you want? Let me just do it for you quickly. That's not always a good thing. Rather, we exercise patience. Now, further we move on. I know I'm going a little quickly today, but I realize I only have 2 more weeks this week and next week I have to finish the surah. Allah Ta'ala continues, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you believe, in ja'akum fasiq, if a fasiq, if someone who's sinful, an open transgressor, comes to you, binaba, with some type of news, fatabayyanu, clarify it. And I wish I had the screen to show over here, but think of the word tabayyanu, ta ba ya, and noon. Okay, ta ba ya noon. Ta, leave it alone. Ba, take the dot from the bottom out and put it 3 dots on top. It becomes a tha. The ya, take the 2 dots out from the bottom and put it on top. No, sorry. Take the ya, take the 2 dots from the bottom and make only 1 dot. It becomes a ba. And the noon changes to 2 dots. It becomes a ta. It becomes fatathabbatu. I mention this because in one of the qira'at, it doesn't. The verse reads, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu." Another qira'ah, another recitation reads, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatathabbatu." Oh, you believe, if a transgressor comes to you with some type of news, clarify it. Make sure that it's correct. In another verse, another reading, that same verse, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatathabbatu." Oh, you believe, if a fasiq, if someone who's an open transgressor comes to you with news, but to confirm if it's true and accurate or not. And tusibu qawman bijahala, lest that you would what? End up causing a problem or be upon a group of individuals based upon ignorance. فَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَأَنْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ, and based upon this, you would have so much regret. You would then become regretful over what you did. Now, subhanAllah, why is this verse revealed? The sabab al-nuzul of this verse, let's go to the next slide, is that the story revolves on Banu Mustaliq. And Banu Mustaliq, Harith bin Dirar radiallahu anhu, he became Muslim. And when he became Muslim, he spoke to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ presented to him the deen. The Prophet ﷺ presented to him the idea of prayer, salah, and of zakah as well. He accepted salah, he accepted zakah. He went back to his people. He spoke to his people also became Muslim. Now, the Prophet ﷺ had was going to send him a collector of zakah. Walid bin Uqba radiallahu anhu was the one who was chosen. Now, prior to Islam, Walid bin Uqba radiallahu anhu, he had a disagreement with Banu Mustaliq. And when he had some sort of, there was some beef between them, for lack of better words. There's some issues between them. So in one of the tafsir, it mentions that he was afraid that Banu Mustaliq would kill them, would kill him, the zakat collector. So in one version of the tafsir, Walid bin Uqba, he comes towards Banu Mustaliq and he sees them all coming out. Now they were coming out because they became Muslim out of happiness that we can now pay our zakah, because we're told that the Prophet will send a zakat collector. Now we can give him our zakah. Walid bin Uqba saw them coming on. He thought to himself, subhanAllah, these were enemies of mine before Islam. They see me, they're going to come and kill me. So he raced back to the Prophet ﷺ. When he came back to the Prophet ﷺ, and the other another tafsir mentioned that he actually didn't even go to Banu Mustaliq. He came up with this, he didn't lie, but he came up to this conclusion because he feared that they would try to kill him. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "O Messenger of Allah, they wanted to kill me." And so now the Prophet ﷺ had the situation where he had to discern what to do. So he told Khalid bin Walid and the Muslims that don't overreact. Let's first figure this out. So he spoke to Harith. He reached out. He sent a message to Harith bin Dirar radiallahu anhu, and they spoke. And at that point, he was given the information that, in fact, Walid bin Uqba did not come to us. And so the Prophet ﷺ confirmed this with Walid bin Uqba as well. And he did mention, "O Messenger of Allah, I was afraid they were going to kill me." And so this entire situation was averted. Because the other option, some Sahaba said, "O Messenger of Allah, they've gone back against the deen, or they've lied to us, so let Allah send us to go attack and bring them to justice." But the Prophet did not want to be hasty and do this, and lives are lost and blood is shed and property is destroyed, etc. So he said, let's just wait and figure this out first. Now, so many times, what do we do? And this is like, subhanAllah, this is so true of the Facebook, WhatsApp, what other social media exists, Uthman? What other social media exists? Twitter, all these other things out there. What do? We see a message and we forward it right away. Don't you know that Joe Biden invested in this company and that's linked to Hillary Clinton? It's all masterminded by Barack Obama from his Muslim this and that. And then we forward it out. Or don't you know Donald Trump? He's pushing this type of mask and not this mask because he owns percentage of this stock. And you know, any type of news that comes to us, before we relay it, it's mandatory upon us to affirm that it is confirmed that it's true. In fact, the Prophet mentioned that it's sufficient for a person to be called a liar, for that person to relate everything that they hear. Now, look how often that happens to us. We get we forward it on. Look at this whole COVID situation. So many messages are coming in from left and right about, this doctor said that, I work in this department of this hospital over here, and now I reached the conclusion that COVID's all made up. And, and people are trying to purposely kill all minorities, etc. I don't know the veracity of this information. My job is what? Not to send it out. If you send it out with parts, and then what do you say? Oh, I was just forwarding it along. No, the moment you take and you forward it along, you stamp it with the approval of your name that I accept this as being true. And there are some exceptions. For example, I had received some information, so I sent it to some scholars, and I put there, is there truth to this? And to which the response was, no, there's not truth to it. But the idea is that we can't just forward things out. We just can't repost and say, oh, well, I saw it online, it must be true. No. In ja'akum fasiqun. If a fasiq, if someone's an open transgressor comes to you with news, fatabayyanu or fatathabbatu, we have to clarify and affirm that it's true before we pass on the word. What about this comes from a non-Muslim source? Now that changes even completely. Fasiq is a believer who sins, who transgresses openly. A non-Muslim source, that's going to be even more different. And so we have to then even bil-ola take even further steps to do what? To confirm the veracity of this statement. Is it authentic? Is it not? Is there issues? Are there not? If not, don't let it pass you. You become that buffer and that barrier that nothing goes by. So much information personally. People backbite, slander, they spread tales and slander, and it gets out. And what do we say? Oh, I just thought that was true because so and so said it. It doesn't matter. You have to first confirm that it's true. And these forwards and these posts, etc., about the president and about this and that and about whatever else is out there about Tony Evers and the governor and then this and that. We have to be extremely careful before we send these things out. And if you feel like I'm speaking to you, I'm not. This is a general statement I'm making. It's actually happened in my family recently. It happened in my family recently. That's actually where some of the thought came from. But regardless, if you are speaking, I'm not. But if you can take a lesson from it, we can all take a lesson from it, inshallah. أن تصبحوا على قوما بجهالة أن تصيب قوم بجهالة. That through our own error and our ignorance, we end up harming people. فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. And I remember, when 9/11 first happened, when I was young. I was not that young. I was what? I was 20 years old about. Um, everyone started spreading the messages that gas prices are going to go up, and everyone raced to the fuels to the pumps to fuel up. It didn't go out, but a lot of people were inconvenienced greatly waiting in line for hours for just fuel. You have to confirm these things before we forward it along. Now, there's another very interesting point that comes here. How is this term fasiq used if a Sahaba is going to be is going to be spoken about over here, and that I'll have to say for next week because we're out of time. But we have to make sure that we're not hasty, that we confirm the sources, and this applies to both legal matters, religious matters as well. It's not only religious matters; it can go to other matters as well. So I'll stop over here. We ask Allah Ta'ala Tawfiq to be amongst those individuals who are able to follow and fulfill the rights that have been bestowed upon us from the rest of from Allah Ta'ala over the rest of creation, the way that they deserve to be filled. We ask Allah Ta'ala to allow us to never raise our voice amongst our elders or precede them or the Prophet them or precede our opinion in front of Allah, the Prophet's statements. We ask Allah to protect us from being amongst those who are ever disrespectful to those who to anyone in this world. And we ask that we make us amongst those who always confirm and affirm statements before we pass them along. وآخر دعوان الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله